News First, face to face with Charlene Benedict.
Many things are happening in Sri Lanka right now. The sports minister has all of a sudden been removed from office. It might be a surprise to some. Some might think, well, this was in the making. But in addition, of course, Minister Harin Fernando has been given additional responsibilities. Pavitra Vaniarachi, former Minister of Health, has also been given a ministerial portfolio previously held by parliamentarian or Minister Roshan Ranasinghe, no longer a minister though. What is really happening in Sri Lanka moving forward? What can we expect? And to discuss these matters and much more, we've got with here today, a seasoned politician, of course, Chandima Weerakkody, former minister. A very good evening and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Charlene, for inviting me.
Mr. Weerakkody, first things first. Now, Parliament is, of course, in an utter mess. The president keeps on saying that things are getting better, we are becoming more and more stable. But by the looks of it, it doesn't seem that Sri Lanka is moving towards any form of stability. Even the discussions with the creditors, nobody really knows what's happening. Now, recently, when the issue of the Supreme Court verdict on who is to blame for the economic crisis in Sri Lanka was brought up in Parliament, the President himself said that Parliament is the body that is vested with managing the finances of the country, and that is enshrined in the Constitution, which is true. But as a member of this body that is given this responsibility of managing the finances in the country, how much are you aware of what is going on with the negotiations with Sri Lanka's creditors? How much do you know?
Well, we have been kept in the dark, I must tell you, with repeated requests to at least brief, not the Parliament, the Committee on Public Finance.
Okay.
We have not been briefed. Of course, finally, once the agreement was entered into, it was brought to Parliament for a vote, which is not a requirement.
So this is, you're speaking about the IMF agreement?
IMF, yeah.
Okay,
so
all right.
The initial activities, yeah, like at the moment, that is our number one priority to take the country forward.
Right.
And at the same time, previously, I've been in this Parliament, we have not had a Public Finance Committee functioning that time. Not the members of Parliament, not even the Cabinet. I don't think even the then Ministers of Finance really understood what was brought to Parliament. Those are all drafted, written, determined by officials, which was blindly brought into Parliament, and approval was obtained without any questioning.
So this is the IMF agreement?
Not IMF. Previously.
Okay,
IMF,
all right.
It applies technically to IMF as well, because we were, like, as the opposition, we were not by any means trying to obstruct taking the process forward. We just requested the government to keep us posted, because I mean, we are a elected Parliament, though the mandate of the government is questionable. It's not a mandate which is approved by the people anymore. The members of Parliament are elected by the people, so we are answerable to the people,
to your constituents.
Yeah. So as a result of that, we wanted to know, like, of course we had to take serious decisions. I mean, we had to, like, we know what the real issue in the country is. In order to come out of it, certain cuts will have to be introduced, whether we like it or not.
Okay.
But all such should be equal, at least. At least such should be equally shared. But it is so unfortunate, certain people who are deemed to be privileged, or who are close to the government and the cabinet, are given preferential treatment, as opposed to people whose hard-earned money has been taken off due to these agreements.
No, but to me it seems as if the President is implying that since Parliament voted for all of these budgets and whatever decisions that were taken regarding the finances of Sri Lanka, or even the tax cuts. Since the Parliament voted in favor of these moves, you can't individually hold the President, the Executive, the Finance Minister liable for these matters. Parliament is also responsible. My question to you is, for Parliament to be responsible, there must be more than just a rubber stamp. There must be more than just a group of people who stand up and, depending on where the leader of the party votes, vote in line with him. That shouldn't be the case. They need to analyze these things, and that is the reason why people vote them into power, give them their mandate to represent them in Parliament. My question to you is, can Parliament really be held accountable for these mistakes, these unsound, inept decisions that were taken regarding Sri Lanka's economy that led to this crisis? Were a majority of parliamentarians even aware of what these decisions were, what they would do?
Leave aside those who are not concerned, or those who cannot understand, or those who are ignorant. There are a certain number of members of Parliament, especially in the opposition, who are keen to know what's happening, who have been demanding to know, but even they have not been kept informed. That's why I said at least the Committee on Public Finance has not been informed of what is being done. So it's a very sad state of affairs. Finally, the executive takes decisions, they implement, and once it fails, they try to put it on Parliament. But you have to understand it. You have to say, look at the mirror and say these things. People in this country, they know who is responsible. They know who is at the moment lying to the people. Because when this president took over, I think it's 18 months back.
Okay.
The expectation was, the promise that was given to the people was that the country will be brought to a settlement within 6 months, maximum within 1 year, and people of this country will be given an opportunity to select or elect the government of their own. But at the moment, there is no talk about elections. Elections are deemed to be, I don't know,
a non-entity.
Now it's not a word that is in the vocabulary at the moment. But the government is trying to pressure people to believe that there will be someday, very soon, that this country will come out of the mess. But by the day, our issues, okay, now the most popular slogan of this government is no petrol queues. But people can't afford to pump petrol. Now by January, when the VAT is introduced, it will be impossible to.
But I believe the Minister of Power and Energy specifically said that the VAT will not be applicable to diesel and petrol.
No, they said they're trying.
They're trying?
Yeah, he specifically said that the taxes will be imposed. He said they are trying to see what can be done. And as of now, petrol, diesel is also included in the new list of VAT charge.
So these weren't previously under the ambit of the value-added tax net?
It was not. And at the same time, then they said this electricity is available. But do you know, by now 778,000 people have lost the access to electricity. 778,000 have been disconnected for life. And they say there is people can move about freely. The hotels are open, but how many can afford? How many can afford? How many people do eat all 3 meals? Now this is, we are coming for December. January schools are starting. How many kids will be crying without, leave aside the bag, leave aside the shoes, how many will be crying without books? Do you know in this country how many children use one single book in school to write notes for all 8, 9 or 10 subjects. This was never the case. Malnutrition has gone up by like huge numbers. If I remember right, 60,000 infants are suffering from severe malnutrition. Where are we heading for?
Mr. Weerakkody, of course, this is a typical scenario where success has many fathers, but failure is always fatherless. When these massive projects were implemented in Sri Lanka, these projects that we call white elephants, that has not really brought a return on investment to Sri Lanka, and when these bad political decisions, bad economic decisions were taken, there were those who cheered for it. There were those who hailed them as great leaders. And what really has happened now, and what has also been highlighted in the Supreme Court decision, is the breakdown in the trust that the people have with all parliamentarians, and well, at least parliamentarians who are not in parliament right now, but who have been in parliament the previous parliament, or the parliament before that, because they've associated themselves with these top leaders, or the top brass of the leadership. Now, you yourself, Mr. Weerakkody, you campaigned for President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, you've campaigned for President Mahinda Rajapaksa. I don't know how far you approved of former Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa took office, but you were in the SLPP, because there is a bit of a division in the SLPP on that fact. But whatever said or done, these leaders who have been found to be guilty or violating the fundamental rights of the people in handling the economy of Sri Lanka within a very short period of time, I believe, 2019 to 2022, just a little more than 2.5 years. So by association with these leaders, of course, there is a certain amount of responsibility, a certain amount of anger on the part of the people that trickles down to you and all the other parliamentarians in parliament. So at a time like that, now you're calling for an election. How do you think the opposition or parliamentarians who are currently in office would fare at a coming election?
Well, it's like this now. My association with Mahinda Rajapaksa was like, I started off my politics with SLFP, and during that time the biggest issue in this country was terrorism. So we wanted a leader to eradicate terrorism and bring about peace in this country. So by 2005, the choice of the people for that particular issue was Mahinda Rajapaksa.
Right.
So I supported him representing the party for that, and that was a successful story.
Right.
I mean, we must say,
give credit where it is due.
It should be given. But subsequently, after 2010, when this playing up started, we were like, we never gave our blessings or approvals, but we were, since members of SLFP, we were really voiceless, helpless and voiceless as elected members. Then in 2015 we decided to move away and form Yahapalana government.
Right.
But unfortunately, Yahapalana government again was going towards there was no unanimity in that. There were lots of good things that were introduced, but the two sides were meddling, like trying to move away to promote their own parties. Like we represented SLFP, some of our colleagues represented UNP. So that the priority was not to develop the country, but to develop the parties. So subsequently, the parties moved away back again. So we thought SLFP and SLPP could join as an alliance, and UNP could go on their own. But then it didn't happen. I was from day one against Gotabaya Rajapaksa being brought in as a candidate, and from the day he got elected, I was the first one to start criticizing, or initially to telling him to do the right thing. But we were never given a hearing. He was so adamant, arrogant, stupid, and finally he made a mess of the country and he got into a mess. He had to flee the country, and finally he came back. But the people who are suffering to date due to his conduct are allocating money to look after him. Not just hundreds of thousands, millions.
Hundreds of millions are being allocated for his survival, and the people who were around him, who made a fortune out of association, are having a very good time. They benefited selected individuals, but the rest of the country is suffering. But
so
now, Mr. Weerakkody,
I had the guts to tell from day one to do the right thing. But unfortunately, no hearing was given.
But Mr. Weerakkody, since you spoke about the expenditure for former presidents, now in a country like Sri Lanka, especially in a country like Sri Lanka, now I know for a fact that countries like the United States of America, France, Germany, Belgium, many European countries, they have pension schemes for former presidents that take care of all of their needs, so on and so forth. But in a country like Sri Lanka, which is currently a bankrupt country, with millions of people suffering without food, millions of children suffering without food, do you think it's really fair for these former presidents, former family members of even deceased presidents, to accept this amount of massive amount of money? Like, seriously, I'm very unsure as to what the expenses are for. An average person in Sri Lanka, now they're taxed for 1.2 million rupees a year. 1.2 million rupees a year, they're being taxed. There are many people who don't even earn 500,000 rupees a year and still live. They take care of their entire family even with less than 500,000 rupees a year. So a former president or a family member of a former president, what do they really use these hundreds of millions of rupees for?
Well, like you said, in other countries, as a concept or in principle, in order to attract people who are competent, because once you become the president, your journey ends. You can't be employed anywhere, you can't take up any assignment within the country, so you have to be able to live your life, and once you function as a president of a country, you have to maintain certain standard.
Okay.
So what should be given, if at all, is to maintain such position, which is a reasonable amount. But presently what happens is, there are army of, now not all the presidents, I must say, but the last president, I think is using about 1,000 military people to protect him, protect his official residence, protect his private residence. Likewise, that type of thing is not reasonable. It is, they should understand what the country is going through.
1,000 army officers to protect the former president?
Thousands of, I've seen the number of people around his residence. It should be, I haven't counted, but in Sri Lankan language, it's like thousands we see. So which is wrong. And not only those, there are, now look, take the defense secretary, he's just another secretary. Look at the amount of money that is spending. His house, he is using a huge house with I heard there's a banquet hall in the house, and the amount of money, there are circulars in this country which governs conduct of ministers, presidents, secretaries and other officials. Whatever that a person using, whatever is entitled to, is not a crime. You have to, the certain officials, ministers, they have to maintain certain standards. Like a minister is entitled to 3 vehicles, which is, I think, fair in this country. If one breaks down, you have to have you can't be staying at home just because your vehicle breaks down if you are a minister in the country. and a backup when requires to take. So that's how the 3 are assigned. But how many of the ministers are using only 3? And secretary is entitled only to 1 vehicle and a coordinating secretary. But how many staff do they? I mean, not all the secretaries, I must say. Not all the ministers also, I must say. I must, like, you must give credit. I mean, there are lots of them who don't misuse. But the issue is now we have an independent public service. People are pointing it at the parliament and the members of parliament. We have, according to our constitution, we have an independent public service.
But is it really independent?
Yeah, I mean, no, technically independent PSC is there. Technically there is a bribery commission.
But I believe that the provisions to appoint independent members to the PSC was removed by the 20th Amendment. I'm not very sure.
No, now, as of now, the PSC is absolutely independent. They are appointed by the Constitutional Council.
Nominated by the President?
Nominated by the President.
Okay.
So, what are they doing is my question. Now, when the chief accounting officer is not conducting himself according to the rules and the regulations and the ARs and FRs, how can he bring about discipline within the organization? So we are not, as members of parliament, we are not in a position to look into those. It is the duty and the responsibility of those commissions that we have voted in parliament and brought about.
Right.
So the responsibility, I mean, we can from outside raise issues, question as to why this is not happening, why these things are happening. It is up to this message. If today, if there is anyone who's watching from those organizations, should take it up.
But even when we speak of these independent commissions, people have really lost faith in the independence, so-called independence of these commissions, because take, for example, the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka, not really an independent commission in the sense of an election commission or anything of that sort, but the PUCSL chairman made certain determinations which he is entitled to make under the law of Sri Lanka. The commission can decide as to, taking into consideration the public opinions, as to whether or not electricity tariffs need to be increased. But when he made that determination, he was ousted from that position. Same for the Elections Commission. Members of the Elections Commission, at the height of the run-up, at least, to the local government election that was never held, still postponed. Technically, Sri Lanka is still under election laws, given that the election has been postponed indefinitely. But even at that time, the Elections Commission themselves issued statements saying that the government has attempted to postpone this election, to delay this election, to prevent us from holding this election at least 20 times. They've attempted to do it 20 times, and finally they did it. The President himself summoned the Elections Commission, spoke to them, and they did it. So what really is there independence there?
No, the main issue is the President at the moment in this country is not an elected president by the people. He has been elected by 134 members of parliament. And today, had you listened to the Minister of Sports, as one member who had supported, who comes within among 134, openly says that he doesn't have the mandate.
Okay.
So a person who has not been elected, as I see, as you see, as people see, doesn't hold responsibility towards the people. That's why in the best case of election commission is that lady Charles. She's the only one who supported postponement of elections.
And now she's a governor.
She's a governor. She made a governor. I mean, does she have self-respect? I mean, when the top of the country does such thing, others will also, like people. We are like people who have various expectations. People then tend to, I mean, that is what you usually call political favorism. So commission members also can be gullible. So that is why there is responsibility bestowed upon elected members. Now that is the President probably knows at any given elections he will be ousted. That is why he doesn't want to hold elections, because he doesn't want to hold he's postponing elections. I mean, his conduct itself probably makes him feel how people are going to react to his conduct and the government. So in such government, when the government is like sure, when the government knows for sure that they will be ousted, then within the balanced period that they can be in power, they will enjoy life the way they want. That is what is happening in this country.
Mr. Weerakkody, judging by what you said,
look at it, now no investor will now, if you go to the ground and question people, everyone will say at the earliest given election this government will be taken out of power.
So no investor is going to come knowing that these policies are definitely going to change come the election of a new government. And of course, Mr. Weerakkody, based on what you said, it almost seems as if 134 members of parliament currently reducing, with of course Roshan Ranasinghe moving out and many people.
And the budget got only 222 now.
Yes, so that number is reducing. So that many, a few rogue MPs in parliament who have deviated from the mandate of the general public and used their votes for their own benefit or for the furtherance of their own agenda are currently running Sri Lanka. But the question on the minds of the people is, Mr. Weerakkody, I'm sorry, but I can't give you time to answer this because we are almost up with the time on Face to Face, is what next? Who can we vote for? Who can we trust? Who can we entrust the future of Sri Lanka, the future of our children, the future of this beautiful country? Well, of course, you will get an opportunity to decide at an election, hopefully, will be held next year. Thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of Face to Face. Thank you very much, Mr. Weerakkody, for joining us on our program this evening. Until we meet again, take care and God bless.
Thank you for the invitation.